cook calls this recipe happiness in a jar, or summer in a jar. Who could argue with that? Strawberry coconut freezer jam sounds like a taste we must try. Cy Foster is the recipe creator and cook. It's always great to see you. Are you kidding? Strawberry coconut jam? I just say it, my own mouth waters. And I understand this is a jam with a story behind it.
It is. So I went to Pig in a Jelly Jar. Is that what it's called? I think it is.
I've never been there, so what is that?
It's so fun. It's just this little restaurant that's kind of over close to Liberty Park. Okay. And they serve, he does biscuits and all kinds of breakfast items, and then they have flavored jam. So I'm not sure if they do more than this, but I've had the strawberry coconut and the blueberry lavender. Wow. Which is so yummy. So I went there and I just kept eating the jam, and I thought, I've got to make this at home. So I went home and I looked for a recipe and there was nothing online. So I just took a freezer jam recipe and then just added a few things to it.
We heard from the restaurant owner, you said, hold the biscuits, I just want the jam. No, just kidding, just kidding. And I hope I didn't offend you earlier by referring to this as tiger's blood, but that's kind of the snow cone combination.
Right. So yeah, it is such a great combination.
I can't wait. Teach us.
So, okay. So I'm just going to tell you a couple tips, first of all, when you make freezer jam, because a lot of people think this is difficult, and it's really not. Okay. So you're not cooking the fruit at all. You're just chopping fruit up. And this fruit I've already chopped, and I just pulse it in my food processor. So you put the fruit in, and then you put the sugar in, and then you let it sit for about 10 minutes and mix it up. And when you first mix it up, it's like, oh my goodness, I've done something wrong, because it looks all white, which is what we did in the beginning of the segment. But as it sits, it macerates, which means that it brings the juices out in the fruit, and it gets more liquid like this. So this is just the fruit, the fresh fruit, and the sugar. Okay. And then we're going to add to this, it just has 1/3 cup of coconut. We're going to put the coconut in.
So it's not even flavoring, it's the actual flakes.
Just the coconut. Okay. And then we've already done the pectin, which this is the only thing that you cook. You just boil the water, you put the pectin in, and then you just add this, and that's what thickens the jam. So you're just going to pour this in when it's hot. Yep. And that's what helps, give it its thickening.
So I was laughing because my sister and I, Lindsay, I'm going to drag her down with me in this comment, because we've never made jam before, period, right? So she gets in her head, in her pretty little head, that we should make freezer jam about 2 months ago, but having never done this, she put a call out on Facebook saying, does anyone have any advice or tips on how to make freezer jam? And we were mortified because it was so simple. Like, there really wasn't a lot to it.
I mean, I don't know why people are afraid of this, because it is so simple. And I think a lot of people think, oh my goodness, you have to cook the jam, then you have to put it in the jars and process it. And this is it, really. That's it. And
now, what if it starts to get runny? I've heard that is kind of a worry.
So I'm going to tell you a few little tips and tricks here. Please. One is, and then, before I forget, this is coconut emulsion. Okay. And so the difference between coconut emulsion and coconut flavoring is coconut emulsion is not as strong, and it has sugar added to it already. It's mostly used in baking, and because the flavor doesn't bake out. But I like it in jam. I think it's perfect for this jam.
Where do you get that in the store?
You buy this at any craft stores, or like Orson Gigi carries this, and you want to store it in your fridge after you've opened it. But that is it. You're just doing fruit, jam, the pectin, and then the flavoring, and then we put a little coconut in. Okay. And so you want to make sure before you start out that you pre-measure things, because I cannot tell you how many times I've made jam, and 1, 2, the phone rings, and then I'm like, was that 2 or 3? So measure everything ahead of time. Okay. First big tip, don't double your batch. If you double the batch, I don't know what it is, but I've got this great big bowl, and you're thinking, oh, you could do like 3 or 4 times in there. Logical. It never turns out.
The consistency or what?
Right, the consistency never works out if you double it. Do separate bowls. You can do several batches at once, separate bowls, but don't double batch.
Okay, there it is.
Bad idea. Okay. And then the other thing is, when you were talking about sugar, and some people will say, oh, I don't want to put that much sugar in my jam.
It does feel like a lot when you're counting cups and dumping it in.
It's like 2 cups of fruit to 4 cups of sugar. Right. But if you want to reduce the sugar, use a low sugar recipe, and a pectin that's made for that. Don't try to reduce, if you try to reduce the sugar in a traditional recipe, you will end up with syrup instead of jam. It won't set
where
up.
the runniness might
right.
come in.
And freezer jam already is not quite as thick as cooked jam, so you want to make sure to follow the instructions.
Okay.
So that's a really big deal.
What are we storing this in?
You can store, because it just goes into the freezer, anything that is freezer safe. So, I mean, really, you can buy plastic containers. I've used all kinds of things because you're not sealing and setting it on a counter. You're just putting inside of a jar. You just want to make sure that when you use a jar like this, a little canning jar.
So you can use the glass jars.
Right, and you can reuse the glass and you can reuse this ring here, but don't reuse this little
topper.
this little lid. You want to make sure and buy new. These are a couple of dollars, so replace these every year. But you can use these over and over again.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
So
well, we start to fawn all over the idea of strawberry coconut jam because it sounds so exotic, and I know it's delicious because you made it. But really, you look at this process, and your mind starts to go. You realize you can do all sorts of combinations, like blueberry lavender.
Right. And then I did last year. I did apricot almond.
Oh,
which is really yummy.
Yeah,
so good and just so easy. And again, all I did was apricot and almond flavoring, and it is just so good. And apricot is one of the easiest fruits to do as well because all you have to do is split it in half. You throw away the pit. You do not have to peel the apricot. You just pulse it up.
Really?
So
peel and all.
Right. It's so awesome. It's one of my favorite, most favorite jams.
Delicious.
You have to have a taste of that and see what you think. There's a little
Can I,
spoon
please?
there.
Okay.
Yep.
Is this how you ate it at the restaurant?
Yeah. Just give me a straw or a spoon.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Isn't it good?
It's like snow cone in a jam. Really,
so
that's
yummy.
my favorite snow cone flavor, so now I have a favorite jam flavor. It doesn't hurt when we make it with your biscuits or with your rolls, I'm just saying. Thank you so much.
You're
Recipes
welcome.
for this and more on your website.
Yes, on abountifulkitchen.com.
Thank you. Great to see you. We'll link you over to her website from ourstudio5.ksl.com.